I am Will Leitch, here as always with the great Bernie Miklasz. Happy 2024, everyone. Congratulations to making it to 2024. May we be so fortunate as to make it to 2025. It's going to be a wild year. Bernie, Happy New Year. Are you still partying? I'm still partying from the new year. I'm just raging all the way through. But which is to say, I think I was in bed by 10:45.
I stay up later than I used to, but it's just get some reading done and catch up on stuff I want to watch. And, it's been, the night owl thing works well for me. It kind of clears my mind, so I like that a lot. But no, you were saying you hope we make it to 2025. I totally agree. And I anticipate hopefully that we will. But then again, how many health problems did the Cardinals create for their fans with that 71-91 season last year? And to a point, to the offseason, because people, I don't know, don't seem to be all that happy. And that might be putting it in a mild way.
When I am on my deathbed, Bernie, and I am, whenever that is, hopefully not for a long time, but when I am on my deathbed, there will be a little part of me that will say, I feel like I would probably have another 6 months at least had it not been for the year of Juniel Quercudo and Irving Lopez and Michael Ciani and Trace Barrera. I feel like that year. And Ryan Tepera and Kyle Leahy, all the names from that year that someday will destroy our immaculate grid scores because we're like, my God, who exactly is Irving Lopez? And how in the world did he get 11 at-bats for the Cardinals?
I don't even remember that he did, and this was last summer. I don't even remember his name. I mean, yeah,
well,
to be fair,
he went 0 for 11.
Oh, okay.
But he did have an RBI. I don't know how, but he got an RBI, maybe a sac fly. But that was then the time when they had larger rosters. They're going to have 26-man rosters to start the season, which was where I think people were maybe a little surprised by the move the Cardinals made. Before we get into that move and kind of dig into the new year, a reminder as always, who follow us on Twitter at Seeing Red Pod. All of you that follow us on Twitter/X probably knew, or you listened to Bernie's show, knew that we were coming back today. They'll be less surprised to see it in their feeds, but that's the way to find out what's going on. Email us seeingredpod@gmail.com. We got a lot of emails this week. We'll try to get to them as well. But I think the big surprising news, I think there are frankly, more important Cardinals things to discuss, both financially and roster-wise. But the biggest, I think, it was a good reminder. Matt Carpenter had been gone from St. Louis long enough that I found people that were always yelling at Matt Carpenter, and people were always yelling at Matt Carpenter. I feel obliged to point that out, at least a loud version of the kind of online fan base. Those people had kind of been like, oh, good, look what he's doing for the Yankees. Good for him. It's nice to see things going well. Sorry it didn't work out for the Padres, but I'm glad he's still hanging around. That's all that. A lot of that came back when the Cardinals signed Matt Carpenter to a 1-year minimum deal. Does not really look like a lot at risk other than a roster spot. I'm curious, Bernie, what was your take on the move, and was your take on the reaction to the move, I'd say, from a large portion of the fan base?
Yeah, well, number one, I would love to say I have some optimism that he'll be, a really solid contributor and put up decent, solid, good numbers, whatever. But I mean, his recent history, persuasive in terms of, well, that's probably not going to happen. That's unlikely to happen. Sorry. Because really the only place that he was able to put up massive numbers, since his bat turned cold after the 2018 season was Yankee Stadium in 2022. Everywhere else he hit like 205 and with a lack of power. So I don't see how at age 38 that, he can turn back the clock, because he won't be playing half his games at Yankee Stadium, among other things. But there's also a personal side to this. And as I said in what I wrote at scoopswithdannymac.com, I have no problem acknowledging, this has been one of my favorite players. I mean, I really respect him as a person and even the kind of teammate that he is. And he's actually been one of the very best Cardinals in the time that Bill DeWitt has owned the team, which is since 1996. I mean, if you look at where Carpenter ranks in terms of wins above replacement since 1996, the only guys with more are Pujols, Molina, and Jim Edmonds. I mean, and he's next, and he's so. My point is, I understand what he means to the franchise because I happen to have just great admiration for him. What a wonderful leadoff hitter he was for those 6, 7 years too. But is this a case though where they're sort of overdoing the clubhouse culture thing? You know, it's like I'm joking around. It's like, what the hell went on down there last year? I mean, were there, guys trying to poison each other in the energy drinks? I mean, I mean, it's like they're so obsessed with this that it kind of like makes me worry a little bit. It was really that bad? I guess it was. But anyway, to that end, he will help because he's a respected guy. He's been at the top. He's been at the bottom. Any teammate who's going through anything will have something in common with Matt Carpenter's experience, so I think he helps in that area. There's a question to be raised though, is like, is that just media stuff? Is that stuff that teams put out there? Well, we really got to improve our clubhouse culture. It's sort of become such a cliche now. I think there is something to it. And I think the Cardinals will have a better clubhouse. And along those lines, I think Matt Carpenter can provide some value. I just don't. I doubt that he'll hit. I hope I'm wrong.
Yeah, I doubt that he's going to hit too. I have to say, even if you look at that 1 year with the Yankees, and that was great. But for record, like he played 22 home games for the Yankees that year. He actually only started 13 of them. I'm looking at his splits. He had 9 homers there. On the road, his numbers were, he had an 840 OPS, which is,
not bad.
It's not bad, but certainly is certainly, at home, he had a 1.605 OPS in his 13 starts. He was absolutely ridiculous. It's also worth noting that, remember, he got hurt, came back for the playoffs, and could not hit. And actually led to a lot of frustration among Yankees fans who thought they were getting Babe Ruth coming back. And he was really kind of non-rosterable for the Padres most of last year. And I think that, and it's funny, I've heard a couple people say, hey, he can play a lot of positions. I kind of feel like Matt Carpenter has he plays all positions equally average to poorly, I would say, at this point in his career. Not always in his career, but I think at this point in his career. And they list him on the website as a DH. As a roster fit, I don't understand it. I don't think it makes a lot of sense, to be entirely honest, particularly because, I feel like we've spent a lot of this offseason being like, okay, so is there a spot for Burleson on here? Is there a spot for Luken Baker on this roster? I was actually kind of curious. Luken Baker is someone I have some quiet optimism actually about for this year. I don't know how you can possibly have Luken Baker be on the opening day roster if Matt Carpenter's on there. Like, I don't know where you would, you already have one guy. I don't know where you would put Luken Baker, who can't play others than first base or designated hitter either. So I don't really get that. I think that, and I've heard some people say this is the Cardinals just trying to bring back the nostalgia thing.
Well, that's me. I said that.
Yeah, and I think it's true. I know, I'm not criticizing it. I think it is true. I also think it's a little overstated in that, like, if I'll put it this way, if they think this is hey, it worked with Pujols, it worked with Waino. I love Matt Carpenter. I think that overstates the love top to bottom that Matt Carpenter had from the fan base. I think he was a popular guy. I think he got more popular when he left. I think, you come on, Bernie, how many times did you and I talk about like, wow, Matt Carpenter's really good. Why is everybody all over him all the time? People, particularly his last couple of years in St. Louis, people were all over Matt Carpenter. They were over him all the time. The shift, people drove him crazy that he would not like hit against the shift. I think that like he took too many pitches. I think Carpenter can have some value. Maybe, but like, I'll put it this way: the nostalgia thing for Cardinals fans. I mean, listen, Waino was a wonderful nostalgia fans for the Cardinals last year.
Well,
it was miserable
at the end. He was. It was kind of an ordeal,
but it was miserable the rest of the year, right?
Yeah,
it was miserable the rest of the year. If Carpenter's not good, if he's hitting. I mean, what did he hit in San Diego? 176. His OBP was 322, which is, low, but like pretty good if you're hitting 176. But otherwise, like, his numbers were miserable. His numbers in St. Louis in 2021 were miserable. He slugged 275 in 130 games in 2021. That is hard to do, to say the very least. If he's like that, And that, like, there is good feeling built up for Matt Carpenter. There is not Albert Pujols or Adam Wainwright good feeling built up for Matt Carpenter. So this brings in the other question, which you touched on, and I have to say, I think you got it exactly right. It's concerning what's going on in there. If the idea is like, oh man, we got to get Matt Carpenter in to like get everybody like on the same page, like, and my question to you is this: do you think that things were that bad, or do you think just having Molina around for so long and having Pujols and Wainwright, having those guys around for so long, the year that they, particularly Molina, really not having Molina around to like stabilize or whatever? And listen, also I watched Molina for almost 20 years in St. Louis. Molina was obviously a great clubhouse presence. I would not constantly classify him as stabilizing. Like he was a big personality, right?
Yeah.
Like he was a big personality. There's often some sort of Instagram scandal going on with him. Carpenter feels like that traditional old school Cardinal dude. And I don't know. I mean, like, does Nolan Gorman might listen to that guy, I
Sure.
guess, but like, why isn't he listening to Ali Marmol, right? Like it feels weird to use a roster spot on, like, there's three cases for Carpenter. Here are the three arguments for Carpenter. He's going to be able to hit a little better. The Cardinals fans will be happy to have him back, and he'll be good for the clubhouse. Those are like, we can argue the debates of those merits, but if you're making the case for Carpenter, those are the three cases. I am with you on the hitting. I can't imagine it happening. Like, it's just hard to imagine him being a productive bat. Maybe if you need a walk late in the game, a 12 pitch at bat where he works a walk, maybe. More likely a pitcher's going to throw a 98-mile-an-hour fastball right around the middle, and he's not going to be able to hit it.
He has maintained a great walk rate. So that, yeah, there, as much as there's value in that, yeah, you know, it's good to get on base.
But like in a clutch, in a big spot, like they're going to knock the bat out of his hands. Like he's not hitting the ball with any authority. And so I think so that it's hard to make the argument for that. Fan base wise, I mean, a little. I'm excited to have him back. I'm glad to get out my Carpenter 13 jersey. Sorry, Buddy Kennedy. You do not get to keep 13. That's going back to Carpenter. I'm glad to get that jersey back out. But like, that's still like, if he doesn't hit, nobody cares. Just like with Wainwright, like for Conley, we were willing him not to give up 7 runs in the first inning last year. There will not be that amount of patience for Matt Carpenter as the 26th man on the bench. And this leads to the last spot: is there was such chaos in the clubhouse last year that he can stabilize it, which is maybe the most concerning thing of all of these things.
Well, it was worse than we were led to believe, even though there were a couple of, as we know, a couple of highly publicized examples. I mean, the Wilson Contreras thing was a debacle. I mean, it's just an embarrassment to the franchise, the way they treated him. And then the O'Neill thing, it's almost like I don't care at this point. But yeah, it was an incident, and it did generate controversy. But you know, there must have been a lot going on down there. And I mean, even John Mozeliak the other day in the Zoom call with reporters, you know, mentioned in effect, I'm going to paraphrase that, you know, Paul Goldschmidt in effect tried to do everything he could, but, you know, can only do so much. He needs some help. And that got my antenna up. It's like, well, hold on now. Where was the guy that finished third in the MVP voting in 2022? Like what? Like why? Was Arenado not trying to help in this area? And I think the answer is probably he was compromised. Like he gave an interview to Katie Wu, which I thought was good. There's this in The Athletic on Monday morning, where he was just so bleeping miserable last year. His back hurt. He was mad at himself. He was mad at the losing. He probably shut down. In fact, that's what I've been told by people who know, and I'm not talking about media people. I'm talking about people with the club. Arenado just kind of withdrew from the world because he was just so furious about everything. Well, he's going to have to help. But I'd hate to think that they felt they had to go out and get a veteran guy like Carpenter and sort of have like Arenado insurance, if that makes sense. I mean, that's just weird to me. And I do think that they're caught in between. I think they're caught in between. They're in a transition because, as you mentioned, Pujols, Molina in 2022, that was great. Now Wainwright's made his farewell. They have a younger core of guys, and I think Brendan Donovan. And by the way, I wrote this early in the offseason, so they're not going to trade him because they're convinced he's going to be a great leader, and they value that. And so there's some other guys that I think want to take over and will take charge. but that doesn't happen like right away. I think Donovan's probably the next guy. So there is a bit of a void, primarily because of Arenado, and will he get out of his mental funk? I think he will, but what if he doesn't? Well, they got bigger problems than we thought. But and they're sort of priming their younger veterans to take more initiative in that area, and Donovan's all for it. So I think that's part of it too. Just sort of that generational divide. The younger group's not quite ready. The older group, well, they keep going away. They keep retiring. So, and who knows? It could be Goldie's final season too. So it's an interesting thing. It really, really is. And I do think Carpenter can help because he, in all my decades writing and covering Cardinals baseball, Carpenter, I found him to be one of the best teammates in there. He would make the short list of best teammates. He's very generous with his time. He'll talk baseball around the clock. If someone comes to him and is like they're upset and they're confused, they lost confidence. I mean, he'll talk them off the ledge and keep talking and talking and talking. He really has a soothing effect on teammates that are going through torment. And I do think that that's something that matters. However, again, you'd hate to think that it's all just about that, the idea like, well, we could probably write off that any chance that he'll hit a lot, I mean, in a way that's kind of unfortunate, but here we are. And I also think, if I could throw this in real quick, sorry. I ended my column the other day about this. I said, the Cardinals messaging and their timing on things is so bad. Yeah. They're tone deaf. It's like, well, let's see. You need a stud reliever. The same day that Josh Hader signs a big deal with the Astros, we're bringing Matt Carpenter back. Now, listen, they were never going to sign Hader. That's not the point. But the point is, that's probably the wrong day to present this to your fan base, who they keep waiting and waiting and waiting for bullpen help. Not good timing. But remember, as you've pointed out so many times, the day after the Cubs won the World Series, they extended Mike Matheny. The day after, what are y'all doing?
That's
they need a PR specialist. I've even volunteered my services on my radio show. I said it's inappropriate, but I can help you because your messaging and your timing on things is horrendous. So anyway, go ahead, sir.
Yeah, it's like the Bills extending their kicker this morning.
Yeah, right.
Come on, guys.
Right.
But I don't mean to pick on a poor kicker, but geesh. But yeah, so I agree. And I think, and it's funny because you also see the overarching concern, I would say, with Carpenter, I would say, is more of a symptom of this than necessarily the problem itself. Because in the same way that Daniel Descalso coming back, I think he's a really smart guy, and I think he's and clearly I think he will be of benefit. Molina, whatever role Molina is going to kind of have or not have, it feels still kind of fuzzy.
Right.
I'm sure that it could help. I'm not saying that these things couldn't help. But it is a little bit of a concern. I would say increasingly on a larger concern. One thing that we've seen about this organization, we saw this when they got off to the bad start last year and everybody freaked out about Contreras. There is this sense of when things aren't going well, there's either a freak out or there's a look to the past and see how we'd handled this in the past, rather than any sort of concrete plan for the future.
That's right.
That to me is concerning. And it's funny, this leads to one of the questions I thought was interesting this week. We got a question from, where'd it go? From Christopher Miller. And he basically, he said, hello, outside of eating innings, is there any thoughts behind bringing a veteran staff to help mold the next group of pitchers that were just traded for at the last offseason? And that sounds lovely. Thank you for the question, Christopher Miller. But I don't think one of the concerns about the Cardinals, remember the thing I used to always make fun of Matheny about? I said he was a one-plan man. That was always Matheny's thing. He was a one-plan man. He had that. The most famous example of this is obviously what happened in the Giants NLCS, the disaster of that whole situation. But I remember you talking to him afterwards in the clubhouse down there. And I wrote about that for Sports on Earth, my old site back at the time. He was a one-plan man, and when the plan didn't work, there was no backup plan. There was no plan B, plan C. Cardinals always talk about plan Bs and plan Cs, But it kind of feels like when things go right, they either freak out or they were like, let's get Yachty back here. It worked with Descalso. Let's get Cart back. And listen, I love those times. You are not going to, I said this about Wainwright. I said this when we thought, before we knew Pujols was going to have this great year. I think I even said, if Pujols bats 175 and hits 5 homers this year, I will still rejoice.
That's right.
Every time I see him in a Cardinals uniform. The fact that the Cardinals were able to get him having that year is incredible. And I think as the years go by, it becomes more and more remarkable that Pujols was able to have that final season. But so I'm not against. I'm happy. I guess this speaks to your point of I'm a Cardinals fan who is happy to see Matt Carpenter, though my patience level will be shorter with him than it would have been with Pujols. But I think the larger issue is that the front office seems to be to do okay, what have we done in the past that's worked? Well, remember when we traded for all those pitchers and we traded for Lester and we traded for J Happ and they totally bailed us out in the second half.
Yeah, Quintana.
Yeah. They told us bail the veterans guy, let's do that. Let's throw innings at. Hey, remember when Carp and Descalso were big guys for us in great moments? Let's get those guys back. Yachty, oh my God, Yachty will fix so much. And it feels, whether those things work or not, they feel more a product of desperation than long-term planning.
Well, the long-term planning, went to hell basically because they haven't been able to draft and develop young pitching at all. It's embarrassing, really. They spent first-round draft picks on, guys who they just dumped like Hudson and Woodford, and there was another one in there too. So they had to go with sort of the short fix, and I personally think they did very, very well. I'm very, very positive when the 3 starting pitchers they signed. There's always the caveat, which really shouldn't have to be said because it's an obvious thing for all pitchers everywhere. They have to stay healthy, and we know that. And they're also those 3, Gibson and Lynn and Gray, average age is 35.5, but innings for at least the way it's affected the Cardinals record in recent seasons. I did the numbers. They're conclusive. I won't bore people with them because I've repeated them too many times. But when the Cardinals got a 6+ innings start from a guy, their record was excellent. When they didn't, their record was terrible. When they got a quality start, their record was excellent. In fact, last year, when they got a quality start, that wretched team was 33-15. When they don't get a quality start, it's basically a hellscape. So my point being, those 3 guys they signed have pretty good ledgers when it comes to quality starts, and they have really good ledgers when it comes to 6+ inning starts. So that really fills a need. And again, the numbers show that the numbers are conclusive when you can get more 6-inning starts from guys in the new way of baseball. You get 6+ innings from a guy, you get a quality start from a guy. You're going to win a heck of a lot of ball games. So I have no problem with their short-term solutions because they had no choice because of their failure to develop pitching, which is the bigger story, really. But I think as far as like suturing it up for a year or two, or with Sonny Gray 3, they did well. They did well. They beat the rush on the market too, which I thought was a good thing.
It is also worth noting that for all that talk of, because I agree the record was great when they had quality starts. There aren't very many quality starts that anyone makes anymore in all of baseball, and even in that, the Cardinals were very low on in the bottom 7.
They only had 48. They only had 48. Yeah.
So,
but these 3 guys have actually done.
I agree. I agree. I am pro. I like that move, but I also think it is reasonable for Cardinals fans, particularly when it comes to the bullpen. You brought up the bullpen. I mean, the one thing that's been frustrating about the last few years has been the idea of there's been a lot of wish casting. There's been a lot of, he's got to be better. He can't be as bad as he was last year. And then these things don't work out. To me, the bullpen, I really expect that if they sign those 3 guys, the bullpen would be the area of focus. And listen, there have been ads. I think Kittredge is a good ad, but he's and I think that there's arguments that you can make for Robertson or whatever his name is, Nick Robertson. Yes, Nick Robertson. Right. I think there's something you can be helpful with there. But frankly, you look at this, you're still counting on Gallegos. And listen, I have hope for Gallegos. I think that I would argue Gallegos more than anyone is a guy that's been worn down a lot the last few years, and maybe. Right. But for the record, you know how you wear down a bullpen is not give them a lot of help and rely on the one guy doing well. The problem is if Gallegos starts doing well, the way this bullpen is going is Marmol's going to rely on him constantly because he's going to have to, and he's going to wear down, which is what we've seen from Gallegos on a general. The idea that listen, Derek Gould wrote a good piece about the things that Andre Palante is doing to maximize his whatever from last year. I mean, fine. I'd love for him to do that while we brought someone else in case that doesn't work out. And I think that's the concern too, is that like you're counting a lot on Jojo Romero continuing to do what he did during, frankly, a pretty short stretch, and still had struggle against right-handed hitters. John King, Ryan Fernandez. It's like, well, he's on the roster because Rule 5, so he's got to be up there. That's not what I was kind of hoping for.
No, I agree.
Out of this bullpen is the idea of like, I hope this works out. I hope this works out. I hope this works out. And I know the messaging thing, it's not Matt Carpenter's fault that they didn't add to the bullpen, but it doesn't look great when all that's happened. I never thought they were getting Hader, like, to be clear. Right. But certainly and I also am glad they did not bring back Jordan Hicks to be a starter. It's amazing that's still a thing, by the way. I'm good luck with that, Giants. Let me know. I'm going to assume he's going to be in the bullpen by June, to be honest. But you still feel like there's enough guys out there. This really brings into the larger thing, and I think this is what people's major complaint is. It's not Matt Carpenter. It's not adding to the bullpen. It's hey, weren't we promised a higher payroll? Weren't we promised a higher payroll? And I think that, I think that the question came from, where is it? Yes, from Michael Kapnick. Was the idea of, no, it was Michael Kapnick. He has a good question about the bullpen. I'm trying to find the question. Oh, yes, this is from Aaron Dowdle. Basically, he's like, Bernie, Will, what happened? What happened to the October Mo in the Cards front office that said maybe their model wasn't working anymore? Things were going to change. They were going to climb the payroll rankings. They were going to stretch their budget. They were serious this time. And sure, they did make adding those pitchers, but none of those broke the bank. And they're all short-term deals, which I think are actually good things. I'm glad. I would not feel better if they'd have given Lance Lynn 5 years, $20 million. I'm not saying that, but it does feel like there have been opportunities to raise the payroll only a little bit that I think would have made sense that they've not done, which leads to the TV question, leads to the sense of the overall macro wise, the payroll, whatever our thoughts, and no one wants to spend bad money. But the payroll comparative to the rest of baseball has consistently gone down for a half decade now.
It might be changing this year a little bit because, I mean, I expect that other teams are going to ratchet up their payroll. But, like, if you go to Cott's contracts, I mean, right now the Cardinals are 10th in the 26-man payroll, and they're 11th in the 40.
But there's also a bunch of free agents still out there. I don't.
Yeah, right. And I really do think the Cardinals will make a move for a reliever. But
you do. So you think this is not you think they're still got.
No, I would be I would be really stunned if they don't. And when I say a reliever, I'm not. Well, first of all, Hader's gone. There was never a practical, feasible chance of that anyway. And Robert Stevenson got a ridiculous contract from the Angels based on 2 months in Tampa Bay. That was kind of stupid. So I actually don't blame the Cardinals for not paying that price. Right. But there's still, if you go to I'm telling our listeners, and thank you all for listening. If you go to Roster Resource on Fangraphs, they have a really good free agent free agent tracker where you can just call up the unsigned relievers and look at the list of who's out there. There's a lot of really good guys. So I still think they're going to address that. But yeah, I thought that they would end this offseason with a payroll that was certainly going to surpass what they had last season. And I think in the 40-man payroll, they're going to do that. It depends on just pick your method. You're going to judge it on 26-man or 40-man. I mean, they're moving.
I think if we're slicing the tomato that closely, I think it's reasonable fans to be like, okay, fine. If you have to twist the numbers to be like, well, in the 40-man, they're actually up a little bit. I think that doesn't speak to the urgency that we felt they were supposed to have, and they seem to have.
But again, their messaging's terrible, and they make this mistake over and over again. I have a lot of, I don't really have time on my hands, but I always feel compelled to just dig in and look up things and just try to sharpen my own perspective. I'm not defending the Cardinals, although this will be taken that people will interpret it as, well, I can't believe he's defending. I'm not defending the Cardinals. I just look at their payroll history and they're pretty much where they've been. And that even includes, some bad years that they had earlier in the DeWitt era where, they didn't overreact to that by all of a sudden, like spending a ton of money. I mean, I know the 71 and 91 jolted everybody, including me. I thought it was reprehensible, but I also don't want to see him get stuck with a lot of like stupid contracts. My point is, like, for example, last season, 11 teams that spent more money than the Cardinals didn't make the playoffs. 5 teams who spent less than the Cardinals made the playoffs. So the point is, it's really not how much you spend, it's the decisions you make. And if you can get back to developing your own damn pitching, we all wouldn't be whining about the damn payroll incessantly, And that's why I was fired up that they brought in Chaim Bloom. And I don't know what his long-term position will be or whether he'll be the guy to succeed Mozeliak, but they have had such an absence, such a void of fresh ideas and a fresh voice in that baseball operation. I joked at something I wrote the other day. Chaim Bloom's being treated like second coming of Branch Rickey because it's so bad in that baseball operation right now. So yeah, the best thing they can do is I think they need a massive restructuring of like how they're cultivating young pitching. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know how to say it. I mean, because like for example, they got Sonny Gray, and I think Sonny Gray is really good, and Sonny Gray will be a leader down there. He's taking charge. He wants the role. What they spent on him was a good contract. So they didn't need to spend more on him to prove something to me.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? I try to look at these things one-on-one. But yeah, I do think they could jack this thing up more than they have. But I want everyone to understand that. I think they could have, and it's frustrating, but I also don't. It's not something that I'm throwing fits over,
Well, I think that, as I said, that's kind of how I think about it. Like, listen, I'm glad they didn't overpay for Lance Lynn and Kyle Gibson, right? Like, I'm glad they didn't, just to impress me. I'm glad they didn't do that. But I can look at the team right now, and there seem like very clear holes, like particularly in the bullpen. Like the bullpen, like needs something. And listen, I actually think the Kitchers move is a really underappreciated move. I think that's a good move. I'm happy with that move, particularly for, no offense to Palacios, but I don't think that if it turns out that he becomes the next Rosarina, I'll believe it when I see it, right? And also, I also feel like I just point out, Rosarina is like, he's good. He's not like I think sometimes Rosarina's numbers get a little overstated, that like he is the next superstar. I think that, but the point is that, I'll be surprised. Kitcher to me is a smart move. That's like that. I like that move. That was exactly, but they just clearly need more.
They need more. I don't trust their depth. And then you have Ryan Helsley, when he decides he can pitch, he's really, really good. Although he wasn't as good last year, he was in 2022. I mean, there was some little red flags popping up there, but the problem with him, you can't count on him. You just can't rely on him to pitch. And this is the thing that really bothers me. I mean, he got into this habit, I'm told by a incredibly reliable source. They would ask him in the morning, you think you're ready to go tonight? Can you pitch tonight? Oh, yeah, I feel great, blah, blah, blah. And then it's like 3:30, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, maybe even later. I don't know. I'm thinking about it. I better not go tonight. You can't have that. That's your closer. I mean, you can't have a guy waking up and like changing his mind throughout the day. Well, I think I can pitch. No, I probably better not. He's a bit of a head case. I hate to say it, but he's like sort of turned into, that's one of the things we've seen with their pitchers. They've developed a lot of head cases rather than good pitchers. And that's a concern.
And I wonder if that's not, I mean, listen, every pitcher kind of by definition is a little bit of a head case. It's a weird job.
Yeah.
and relievers in particular. I would give someone like Helsley or Gallegos. We've seen this guy with Gallegos in the past as well. We've certainly seen it with lots of guys in the bullpen. I might give them as individually human beings the benefit of the doubt. The
Right.
fact that, because this keeps happening in St. Louis, but doesn't, like, for crying out loud, Tampa is always the example that people use in this. But Tampa, like, they move, they treat their pitchers like Play-Doh. They move them around, they move them here, they move them here. You don't really hear a lot of them being like, I'm not into it today. I'm not feeling it today. And I don't think it's because they're mentally stronger than Cardinals players. I think it's because they trust the system.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point.
That they trust and are put in a good position, and it's one that they're brought up in. And listen, I think the Cardinals are attempting to do something with that. Like I think that as a process going to take more than 1 year, to say the least.
That's right. Absolutely.
But like, it's clearly an indictment. Like, it's a major, major indictment that I don't think that's because Ryan Helsley is inherently weaker than your average pitcher mentally. I just think that they don't. If I were like, look at what's happened with this pitching staff
I'm just saying.
I'm not sure I trust him.
Let's take the personal, or the person rather than the pitcher. I'll take the person part out of it. You just can't count on him. That's all I'm saying. You really can't right now. I mean, so if he starts off and it's different in 2024, well, then applause. Then I'll say, okay, it looks like you can trust this guy, the pitcher. So and Gallegos will take the ball anytime you ask him, and that's actually one of the problems, because I agree.
For better or worse, right?
He's burned out. I mean, it started with Schilt and it's continued through Marmol, and they're in denial about what some of the stuff that went on with him last season, and I'm talking about performance. I mean, he backed up in a lot of ways where you cannot be backing up. So anyway, yeah, that they do not have enough. They need way more depth in their bullpen. They absolutely, and this idea, and I haven't really talked about this or written about it, so I got an idea now. You know, I love the fact they signed guys that rotation was so unstable and so flimsy last year. I like the fact they signed guys that will at least give them innings and take some of the burden off the bullpen, but also give them more of a competitive chance to win. And I assume Lynn's going to be better. How much, I don't know. He ain't going to give up 48 home runs again. I know that. But if one of the reasons, like, it's like, well, we signed these innings munchers, so we'll be okay in the bullpen. If they're going to do the usual Cardinal thing, where you have faulty logic, they talk themselves into a feeling of comfort and confidence when there's no reason to do so. So in other words, they do something really positive, in my opinion. They signed 3 starting pitchers. They jumped the market. They got 3 guys who can definitely fill a void as far as a glaring weakness. But you don't do that if it means you're going to deprioritize bullpen depth. Well, we've got these innings guys now, Michaelis and, Gray and Lynn and Gibson. Our bullpen's fine. It's going to be fine. They pull that stuff all the time, and it's annoying as hell. It really is.
Yeah, and I don't know. I think that's why people are concerned. But I think people are concerned about the payroll because, I don't know. It's just, if it felt, and part of it is messaging. Yep. But it felt that like they were. I mean, shoot, man, we saw like last year was horrible. Last year was horrible, and the idea that I thought there would be a little bit more of, it's not a matter of like go overpay for this guy. They just don't seem as alarmed as I feel they should be.
Yeah.
Mo at times, particularly at the beginning of the offseason, seemed alarmed. There were times I thought Mo seemed alarmed as the offseason kind of went along. That seems to have dissipated. That feels more like
that's ownership.
A guy dealing with his boss, right?
That feels ownership,
That feels like a guy dealing with his boss than necessarily him in that spot.
Yeah, Mo. I'm not defending him because I think he's gotten stale in the job, but I do stick up for him in this one context. I mean, it still astonishes me. So many people somehow think that the finger of blame should be at him for the payroll or lack of aggressiveness or whatever. No, Bill DeWitt controls payroll, period. Bill DeWitt's heavily involved in every baseball decision, but when it comes to what they're going to spend, that's his thing 100%. So, But maybe Mo's been, in a way, he's been dealing with this for such a long time. He knows what the limitations are. And maybe that sort of takes away some of his aggressiveness. Well, I can't play in that. I can't compete in that financial neighborhood. So what the hell? I don't know. It probably would take away some of his drive. And we could say, well, that shouldn't happen, but I can see why it would happen. When you're only going to be able to spend so much money, you probably don't even dare get involved in certain things. You just stay away. So it's just a strange time in that front office, the ownership front office dynamic. It's just kind of a strange time, which is, what do you expect though? I mean, since '96, DeWitt's owned the team, and he runs it. He runs every area of it where he's heavily involved in everything. And okay, I know he brought in Jeff Luhnow. That worked out great, but it didn't last. But really, in terms of the head of the baseball operation, you had Walt Jocketty in '95, and then John Mozeliak taking over for Mo in 2008. You've only had two guys, and actually Jocketty was hired by Anheuser-Busch in '95. So you've had only two heads of baseball operations for like the last almost 30 years. Where are the fresh ideas? Well, you got them from Luhnow, and actually there was an uptick. So, where are the fresh ideas? Where are the new thinkers, the new voices? They've really stagnated from an ownership management standpoint. I don't think there's any question about it.
Yeah, and I wanted to be. Listen, I think Keim Bloom is a really smart guy, and I think I think he already. I think clearly you've seen from some of the pitching ideas. Those are in line with the way he's generally been most of his career. I'll say, however, that not just him, but a lot of old Rays people. One of the reasons the Rays, I think, have a really great kind of farm system of GMs that like spread throughout baseball. It's partly because they're smart. It's also partly because outside owners have looked at the Rays and said, wow, they win all the time without spending any money. How can we get someone in here to do that?
That's right.
And so at a certain level, as smart as Bloom is, if the idea is, hey, the Cardinals are going to be the Rays, but in the Midwest, that if I'm a Cardinals fan, I think I like the Rays do this because they have to, right? They have no fan base and they don't have any money. The Cardinals don't have to do that. Look at the Dodgers. Why are the Dodgers so good? Because they did Rays with money. But
they also develop a lot of good young
exactly.
kids.
They've done Rays with money.
Yeah,
they've done what the Rays did, but they've also when they saw, hey, we really need some pitching. Hey, we really need this. Hey, we really need this. They went out and got it. And I think that's what's frustrating about the Cardinals. The fact is, do I think the Cardinals front office is as smart or smarter than, say, the Phillies front office? Yeah, I actually think they're really smart. I just think that the Phillies front office has a big advantage if they're like, hey, go get me this guy, go get me this guy, they get him. And I think that sometimes those deals are maybe not the wisest long term, but there's a middle ground there. But the fact that this is all they've done with the bullpen, like the bullpen has huge holes, huge holes, and we are running out of time for them to fill it.
So. I think I can answer my own question, but part of me is confused about why so many fans and observers every year, or a lot of years they expect things to be, dramatically different in terms of spending and like, go get this guy. Well, okay, listen, they went out and got Arenado and they got Goldschmidt, but those were no brainers. They get credit for it, right? But they were no brainers because the other teams didn't ask for much, and and Colorado wanted to pick up a big part of his contract too. So, but other than that, if you look around, I mean, some of their short-term plugins have been fine, but yeah, they don't have that go for it mentality, and they certainly don't have the go for it mentality when it comes to spending. But this is the part I'm talking about, and I think the bad messaging raises hopes every year, and then it's really stupid to do that because when you're going to wind up basically doing the same thing, what was the point of getting people's hopes up? It's really stupid. But I'm not sure why we expect Bill DeWitt and ownership, why we would expect them to, suddenly change everything, and especially, oh no, we're going to spend a lot more. If you look at where they've been from the very beginning, they've been in a certain range payroll rise and they've stayed there. Sometimes most of the time it's worked very well. Last year it was a disaster, so that means there's more of a cry and demand, which I understand. To hey, you got to do more, you got to spend more, you got to go after it, you got to be more aggressive. I agree with that in principle, but again, I also know it's like, well, why would we expect them to do that? They never change. They never change. It's pretty much the same thing. And it's for the most part, it's been very, very good. Last year was a disaster, but for the most part, it's been very, very good. And the way the recent trends are in the postseason, you don't have to be a 100-win super team to actually make a run in the postseason. That's one of the things that doesn't get talked about enough too. But I'm writing about it for tomorrow, or today. Yeah, I mean, the last 3 National League champions average 88 wins. I mean, so what, people say, well, I'm tired of this thing, you win 90 or you win 90. Well, Tom Verducci had a great stat on that team. 100 plus wins have a worse winning percentage in the postseason the last 3 years than the teams that have won between 80 and 89 wins. I mean, it's like we have to adjust sort of the thinking on some of this stuff. Will it happen? Hell no, because everyone's mad at the Cardinals. I get it. Yeah. But the trends are showing, man, the playoffs are more volatile and crazy than ever. And just because you spend more or you win 100 plus, it doesn't mean a damn thing. You can do just as much damage in the postseason or more by winning 85 games. And that's a fact. That's not an opinion. Every number conclusively shows that.
Well,
and you don't think Bill DeWitt knows those numbers? I'm pretty sure he does.
I know, but it's just like the Cardinals are like, I just hear all the time about the thing that makes the Cardinals special are their fans.
Yes.
And it's starting to feel a little bit more like something that's being taken for granted than something that allows them to do things that equal teams in their area of the country would not be able to do. And it's starting to feel that way.
I know Cardinals fans are great. They're entitled to be frustrated. It might sound like I'm knocking them. I'm not really knocking them. I'm just sort of throwing some things from that pragmatic part of my brain. I'm just throwing some things out there. That's all. Because those things should be talked about.
So last thing that we need to talk about before we go, which it is the television business. This television business, we get a good question from it about basically just Mark Hedger just asked, please discuss most likely future TV broadcast scenarios. I know Diamond Sports Valley. Now, a lot of this keeps changing a lot. This keeps changing a lot. And actually, there's a really good, our fan, Dan Perry wrote a great piece in his Birdie Work newsletter, kind of describing everything that's going on with with not just Bally Sports Midwest, but Amazon and all that sort of stuff going on. And I will say what seems to have happened with Amazon, actually, I think you could maybe argue was the worst case scenario for the Cardinals, which is to say, not that the Cardinals basically could have been in a position if everything becomes a la carte. The idea is, put simply, as simple as I can, the idea is that for years and years and years, baseball teams and really sports have just gotten so much money because everybody had cable, and people that didn't even like sports still paid for cable. And so therefore they got all this free money for people that didn't watch their games. Now, because so many people are cutting the cord, there are more, basically the more people are going to have to sing for their supper. And so basically what we were hoping to have out of this Diamond Sports thing is while Diamond Sports has gone bankrupt, they're trying to figure out who owns the games, who's going to broadcast the games. Already the Padres are broadcast by Major League Baseball. I think there may be more teams that's coming from. The Diamondbacks, I think, are like that now. The idea is eventually, would the Cardinals just own the network and just do a subscription model for Cardinals fans? And will every team have to do that? In the short term, that would be hard. But in the long term for the Cardinals, I feel like that would be a massive advantage for the Cardinals. If everybody has to sing for their supper, Cardinals fans, as long as they don't win 71 games for 8 straight years or something, which I guess is always on the table, assuming they get good again, Cardinals fans watch their games. They watched a ton of games last year, even though the team was terrible. It's amazing what we put ourselves through watching all those terrible games. What seems to be happening is it looks like it's going to be Diamond Sports Valley for one more year, and then it could be Amazon, or the Cardinals could fight for their own thing. I'm more to the point. The larger thing is it does seem to be when the Cardinals talk about uncertainty and not and trying to get some clarity on revenue, oftentimes it feels like they're talking about the local cable revenues, which they've had for a long time. And of course, that deal that they signed that is not working out the way the MO was kind of hoping it to, because the company went bankrupt. What's hard for me to wrap my mind around is the Cardinals. Baseball is increasingly a regional, local sport. And it's why the World Series does not get that greater ratings, but it gets huge ratings in the teams, the towns that play it. It's a regional sport. That's actually, I would argue, one of the great things about baseball.
Yep.
One of the great advantages that the Cardinals have is how obsessed the Cardinal fans are obsessed with the Cardinals. Now, everybody watches Cardinals baseball all the time, even when they're terrible. That feels like it could be an advantage, but the Cardinals seem to act like this uncertainty is a disadvantage as opposed to something. It feels like another example of them not being aggressive. If you cannot tell me that the Cardinals did not, like the Mets, like for crying out loud, the Cubs have a local station and the Cardinals get better ratings locally than the Cubs do. I know more people live in the Chicagoland area, but this feels like a time where I would love to have seen the ownership group be more aggressive than they are. And it feels like they're kind of being like, well, we don't have cost certainty, so we got to be careful. And they're just waiting for the game to come to them. I would love to see the Cardinals take advantage of this, and it feels like they're not doing so.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, if they're locked into this contract for 2024, they really can't do anything.
They can't do anything for 2024, but 2025 is really what I'm talking about.
I've talked to Bill DeWitt III about this, and this is his thing. I mean, this is the thing that he basically he's in charge of, and in terms of the future, and he is gung ho about the idea of the Cardinals setting up their direct to consumer broadcast rights. I mean, they'd like to get rid of the whole damn thing because they're confident, as they should be. The Cardinals are a huge regional draw, and I mean they're actually a huge national draw too. There's Cardinals fans everywhere. I mean, it's amazing.
I don't live in the region. I watch every freaking game.
And the only thing that would screw it up is if Rob Manfred and his geniuses say, well, yeah, you can do that, but no, you got to have home blackouts. And see, baseball's that dumb where they would put something like that in, even if some of the teams want to go their own way on this. Until you eliminate blackouts, you're going to have a major problem. You're also going to be hopelessly behind the times, and you're going to be antiquated, and you're going to be a pathetic dinosaur that just can't open your eyes to see the reality. So I'm hoping that some younger people that work for MLB baseball, or some younger consultants who are more in tune with the modern world, will talk some sense into the people who run the sport. But if it's up to Bill DeWitt III, he can't wait to get to a direct-to-consumer product. He can't wait because first of all, he's been doing a lot of work on it. He's been doing a lot of work on it with the Blues because they feel the same way. They could set up their own network and it'd be direct-to-consumer, and it would, they would have, adjacent programming to go along with it, and it would work. I think it would actually be very, very successful, unless the people that run these sports are so stupid that they insist on blackouts. I can't believe they'd be that stupid, but I've also said that a lot of times. So, and I've been wrong just about every time I say it. So anyway, but I think the Cardinals are well positioned. And my whole thing is like, just let me know when they can go. Just let me know when they can, do their own thing. Because I think it'll be a really good thing for everybody, including the fans.
I hope so.
Yeah.
I hope so. But I also hope that they don't do that and then be like, okay, well, the first couple years have some uncertainty, so maybe we gotta, I don't know. I feel like there's always an excuse not to do something, right?
You're right. You gotta always got to take that into consideration.
But all right, Bernie, I'm really glad we're not back to weekly shows yet. That's probably when we get till we start getting to spring training. But I'm glad we got it back together to start the year. Thank you for everyone for all your questions. I'm sorry that we didn't get to all of them, but we obviously had a lot of stuff to get to. So Bernie, Happy New Year.
Yeah. Enjoyed it. Happy New Year.
And thank you for not making me have a long debate about Terrence Shannon, because I'm not ready yet.
I don't even know. Yeah, I don't know if I have an opinion on that.
It's a mess. All I know is when definitely a situation like this brings out the best of everyone. Boy, people just act their absolute best on every side of the region when something like that happens. All right, Bernie, have a great. Well, we won't be back next week, but we'll be back. I would say around spring training. We'll probably get back weekly. But if they make some big move, we'll call an emergency show.
still have demands for more content.
Of course,
more
people
Seeing
will,
Red.
I'll keep making them. Hey, listen, once we get to spring training, I'm ready. If you're ready, I'm ready to go back to weekly shows. I'll be ready to go. But we don't have to do that just yet. So,
all right.
Bernie, welcome back in 2024, and we'll hopefully have an emergence soon before we start going.
All right. Thanks, man.
All right. Be safe.